In this episode of Motive Garage presented by Sparesbox, we finally start putting parts back on Project No Secrets, our R33 GT-R. Now, if you saw in our last episode, the chassis of the car has finally been painted, which is the motivation that I need to keep moving on this project. Now, essentially, the rear of the car has all been refurbished underneath, so we can go and start putting all the parts you can see behind me back into the car. But the front hasn't been refurbished, so we need to remove the front subframe, send all the bits off to get tidied up, powder coated, repaired, etc., before we can reassemble the front engine. So let's take a look at what's going to go in the car right now. Excited to finally put some new shiny parts onto the car that can stay on the car. One of the big things that's going on is our R35 GT-R brake kit. Our calipers were completely refurbished by Produce Factory, which you can watch on an earlier build video. It's got all new seals, even polished the bleed nipples. We have obviously our conversion kit, which we sell on our GT-R Hub online store made locally in Australia. You have the adapter dog bones. You have the adapter hat because it needs to be able to use the handbrake inside. That's a very important part of the puzzle for that. We have the DBA two-piece slotted rotors. We have all the bolts and hardware we need here. We've got our perfectly polished pins that will stay clean for about 1 minute of racing. We've got some E-Lig rear brake pads for it. And that's our R35 GT-R brake setup. You can see the rear sway bar from Whiteline here as well that needs to go in, moving down. We have our rear differential to go into the car. We're actually using a factory center, which is mechanical already, but it was completely rebuilt, shimmed up, new bearings, everything by Sean at Gearbox Masters. New seal, zinc coated bolts, and we have a PRP alloy diff cover. Why do you need one of these? Well, there is two main reasons. One, extra capacity, so it can hold more oil to hold better heat, and the heat sink on the back is bigger. But some cool other features about this, you can see it still has the splash plate to control where the oil goes inside, a splash plate over the breather so it doesn't breathe too much. You can put your own AN fitting here, braided line, vacuum, rubber hose, whatever you want on there. You can see on the back, the drain is actually a really good design because the drain sits lower than where the oil does. So when you drain the oil out of this diff, you'll get everything out. There's a temperature sensor here as well if you want to monitor rear diff temperature. Great for time attack and circuit cars. The other cool thing about this diff is it has two inlets and outlets on the side, so if you want to run a diff cooler. So there you have it, PRP's billet rear diff cover, and obviously gold for this project. It comes with everything you need, O-ring, even the ABS sensor shims, you've got all the block offs and bolts, everything, so that's pretty cool. Moving down, we have a four-wheel drive, or the Atessa system pump and solenoids. As we explained in one of our tech videos, R33, R34 have two solenoids, one for residual pressure, one for pressure controlling the car. This has been cleaned up and ice blasted. It's probably about as good as it's going to get without spending stupid amounts of money pulling it apart. With the Atessa reservoir here, and we have a whole bunch of brackets and stuff that have all been powder coated satin black. We have the straps for the fuel tank, which, as you can see here, we refurbished our fuel tank in an earlier episode, has a French's Performance Garage twin pump setup. The cover for the fuel tank has also been powder coated satin black, and the only part of our build that Tommy F. Yeah is going to approve of is some nice fresh zinc bolts. But the rest of the build, pure Aussie spec. Let's go. So the rear subframe, differential, fuel tank, suspension are all in the car now. Next for the rear is our brakes. Now, if you watched an earlier video in this build series, you'll know that we are going to R35 GT-R brake kit. That kit comprises of the hat adapter that we obviously sell on our online store, GTR Hub. This is basically modified so that you can run the Skyline style handbrake drum on the inside, but then use an R35 rotor on the outside. Now, this is a proper floating rotor design where basically the DBA 5000 series rotor, as you can see, has the outer part bolts up to here, but instead of it just being a normal bolt that goes through, you have a little slider section where basically you put in this little bobbin and a bolt, and that's how it goes together. And when this sits in here, this can slide in and out. And the reason for that is this aluminium hat and the steel rotor, they expand and contract at different rates at temperature. And basically in motorsport, you don't want to be warping brake rotors, which can cause premature wear. And obviously when they warp, the pad doesn't work properly, etc. So a floating rotor is a proper motorsport way to do things. So before we put this together, I went and sent off this hat to get anodized in black to match the front DBA two-piece rotors. Obviously we got the rotors from DBA. The adapter is part of our kit, the dog bone, and we had to get a whole bunch of these bobbins, pins and bolts, which we picked up from V-Sport. They're AP racing items. Obviously we have our E-League brake pads for the back here as well. And obviously Produce Factory redid our calipers, completely refurbished them. We had all new seals, and as you can see, he's done a great job of not just doing the powder coating on the calipers, but also all of our pins have been polished. They've got all brand new bolts. So yeah, this kit is pretty epic. And we need to assemble the rotors first, and then we'll put it onto the car. Let's go. So the rear brakes are on, which means the essentials of the rear end are now in the car. Subframe, diffs, suspension, brakes. Obviously we'll do braided lines for those brakes when we do the entire custom braking system for the car. Because basically, putting in a pedal box, I'm going to do custom lines from front to back once we get to that point. Next on our list to do in our next episode is the front suspension on the car. Essentially, it's all still old, stock and crappy. So let's kick that off in our next episode. Subscribe so you don't miss out.